Hello everyone, my name is Saib and welcome to another episode of this Canvas game development series. And in this episode, we're going to talk about physics. We're going to apply some of the physics effects that we can see in games that makes a real life simulation in some way. But in today, you're going to see how exactly we're going to do that. We're going to apply acceleration, friction, and maybe gravity at the end to see how exactly these things work in a game and how can this change the behavior of the gameplay and how everything actually works. So far we've been just using our velocity to increase the x and y positions of our spaceship or our sprite in our case. And simply this just will displace the objects, same as we did in the previous episode, the keyboards one and the movement. So today we have our keyboard function. It's gonna be exactly the same. And yeah, we have our 4 arrows in here. And the first thing we're gonna apply is the acceleration. Now, the acceleration in its simplest definition is just a physics effect that makes the sprite or the object gradually speeds up. And friction is the opposite. It's just another physics effect that makes the sprite gradually slow down. In our case, it's just the spaceship. So yeah. So how can we do that? Simply we're gonna add these effects into a spaceship sprite. I'm gonna call the first one acceleration X. Now of course for each axis it needs to have its own acceleration and its own friction. So yeah, we're gonna do that for each axis. So now for the X it's gonna be acceleration X, 0 by default now. And for the spaceship sprite it's gonna be acceleration Y, 0 by default. And now for the friction it's gonna be friction X. It's gonna be 1. Frictions are multipliers. That means if I multiplied any value by this friction X, it's gonna be 1, since any value multiplied by 1 will stay the same. So as I said, frictions are multipliers, accelerations are adders. You're gonna see how we can use them to alter the velocity and then of course alter the behavior of this spaceship. So you're gonna see now that it's gonna be friction Y and it's gonna be Y, like this. And now we have our own things, the acceleration and the friction, these two physics effects. So now we need to specify two more variables or two more things. The first one is speed. Let's call it speed, and let's give it a value of 0.2 for instance. Now this speed is simply a number that we're going to use in order to specify the speed at which the object should accelerate. So think of it as of the speed of acceleration, or how much speed this spaceship should accelerate. So yeah, the same goes for the friction. We're gonna specify a drag, and this drag is gonna represent the amount of drag that will slow down the spaceship or the sprite. So yeah, it's gonna be drag now, and let's give it a value that's lesser than the speed to have this kind of drag effect or friction effect. So simply now we're gonna have to do our own press and release to alter the keys. Bear in mind that these two physics effects, the acceleration and the friction ones, they can be applied to any keyboard controlled objects or any keyboard controlled sprites. So yeah, now the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna specify the left press so that we can configure the press and the release methods in here, so that we can actually have some effects. As I said, when we call the key press in here, something is gonna happen in the game when we click on that. So when I click on my left key, the first thing, so you should know that by clicking on the key I'm gonna accelerate the object, and by releasing my hand of that key I'm gonna have the friction effect that slows down the object. So you're gonna see that me moving as I'm clicking on that key, and once I release that key it's gonna drag and it's gonna apply the friction to that object, friction effect. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. You're gonna see now how this works, and maybe you'll understand it more when it actually happens. So yeah, when we press, the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna give the acceleration a value, which is the speed value, since we specified the speed to show how much speed should the object accelerate at. So yeah, it's gonna be spaceship. The first thing is going to be acceleration X, and I'm going to give it a negative speed value since I'm moving to my left, so it's going to be negative. And of course the friction means is gonna stay 1, because as I said, if the friction is 1, any value multiplied by this friction is gonna stay the same. Frictions are multipliers, while acceleration like this is adders. So these two effects will apply on velocity, hence will apply on the position of that sprite, or the spaceship in our case. Okay, now when we release our key, let's say release, okay, and configure that one now. Now, first thing I'm gonna do, if I released, I wanna make sure that my right is not down, the right arrow is not down, so that I'm just releasing my key of my left, same as we did in the previous episode. You should check that one if you didn't, and it explains more about the custom function we have, which is the keyboard one, and yeah, so that you can actually follow up with this one. So if I released my hand of the left and my right is not clicked, I'm gonna slow down. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna specify the slowdown effect, which is the friction one, the drag. So simply I'm gonna say friction one, friction x is gonna be given the value of the drag, that one. Copy that one, or I can just do the same thing. And of course I'm gonna stop my acceleration, so it's gonna be 0 like this, so that I stopped and my speed is just minused, so that you can feel the sense of slowing down and everything. So if I try to do that now, but first we have to alter this play function. As I said, acceleration is an adder effect, while friction is a multiplier. So first thing I'm gonna do is I named that velocity since it was Vx in the previous episodes. So yeah, it's the same. It's gonna be velocity x, and I'm gonna add it with the value of the acceleration, of course for both axes, since every axis requires its own friction, its own effect, its own velocity as well. And now it's gonna be acceleration y. And now of course we're gonna do the same thing, but it's gonna be multiplied since frictions are multipliers. I hope that makes sense by now. And now sprite velocity y, and it's gonna be multiplied by the value of spaceship dot friction y. Okay, so again, once I press on my left, I'm gonna accelerate at this specific speed that we've specified in here. Negative in here is because we're moving to the left direction, which is the -1. When I have my acceleration value, I'm gonna add that to the velocity, which represents the displacement of my object. And once I release my hand, it's gonna apply the friction, which is the drag one. It's gonna have a value of 0.89, and it's gonna be multiplied by this velocity, so that it slows down. I hope that makes sense. It's really not that complicated. And okay, so now if I try my left, I'm gonna click on my left right here, and I'm gonna release. Okay, since I'm actually clicking so hard, okay, just a simple click, you can see this acceleration and friction. Let's make it for all of them so that we can go back and forth, so you can actually see that. And okay, so I'm just gonna copy everything, and I'm gonna alter that one for the right. So now if I'm moving to my right, the acceleration x should have the positive spaceship speed. Friction is gonna be the same, since no friction is gonna be applied when I press, only when I release. And now the release thing, I have to make sure that the left is not clicked, so that I want to move in only one direction at a time, no two clicks together. For now, in the upcoming episodes, you're gonna see how we can move freely and fly around. So yeah, friction is gonna be the value of drag, and the acceleration is gonna be 0 like this. Okay, so now if we try to do it, I'm going right and I'm going left, and you can see now if I goes there, you can see how it accelerates and then slows down once I release my key. When you do it, I think you can test it, so you can actually feel the acceleration in the friction that way. So if I click on my left, you can see that I'm accelerating, and then I'm actually stopping with the drag amount that we specified. The same goes to the different things. This kind of behavior you've seen in games, maybe in Asteroids, if you played that one. The ship actually accelerates, and once we release our hand from any key that controls it, you're gonna see that it actually slows it down. It doesn't stop directly like we did in the previous episodes. So yeah, these two effects are actually necessary in games. They make more of a real life simulation. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Now let's do that for the up and down. Now I'm going up, and the up it's gonna be for the y, and of course it's gonna be minus since it's I'm going up, it's gonna be minus, yes. And okay, and friction y is gonna be 1. And now if I'm going up, it's gonna be gonna make sure my down is not clicked, and as I go down it's gonna be friction y and acceleration y equals to 0, like this. Now we're gonna alter the down one. Now I'm gonna increase my acceleration with the positive speed since I'm going down that way. And the y, as we all know by now, as you should know by now, that the y is inversed, so it increases once it goes down. Okay, so increases like this, and then we're gonna have friction of 1. We're gonna make sure that the up is not down, it's not clicked, or not pressed. So now it's gonna be the friction y, and acceleration y is gonna be equal to 0. Should change that one to down, I think. Okay, let's test that now. If I go up, you can see that it actually happens. If I release, you're gonna see friction. Okay, everything works really fine. Go now in a diagonally way. It's not freely, as I told you, we're gonna do it in the next episodes. It's just diagonally, or just like this. So you can see now the friction and the acceleration like this. The last thing we're gonna do is simply we're gonna add some gravity. Gravity in its simplest form, again, our simplest definition, is just a constant downward force. It just forces our object down, so it's a downward force. So we can simply do that by just altering the values of the y displacement, or sorry, y horizontal or vertical position of our y, simply by going in here. I'm just gonna comment that one. It's gonna say gravity, so that you know that this is for gravity. And now I'm gonna change the velocity of my y, and I'm gonna give it a value of 0.1. Of course I'm gonna add that one since it's going down. So now I'm just increasing the velocity by 0.1 every time in all of these, in this game loop, 60 frames per second. So it's gonna go every loop, it's gonna for 16.67 milliseconds, the loop itself. And yeah, so now if I didn't pull my object up, you're gonna see that it falls down. Okay, let me just see, I go up like this. Now if I didn't pull that object up, it's gonna go down. So this is the downward force that I'm telling you about. If I didn't click up, it's gonna go down. And yeah, that is all of the physics you should know by today. I think this is just a beginners. It's just for beginners. It's not really, there's a lot of things for that I didn't mention, but I think it's a good start. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode. Okay, it went down.